Hello and welcome to Untier Talk, where we talk about PU until we don't talk about PU. I'm joined by Hijad. How are you doing
What's up,
today?
guys?
Yep, good.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah.
Oh, I'm Megazard. I didn't say that, but it's kind of the channel name, so I'd hope that's pretty clear. Anyway, uh, PU is quite a few things have happened, but nothing that is going to get resolved for another few weeks. So since the last one of these little podcasts, in order from least to most important, the PU Best of 3 tournament has started. Archeops was banned by a 60-something% majority from the PU tier, and also it might become a core metagame, which is like a big deal. But if you're more of a casual PU follower who isn't up with all of the really in-depth Smogon stuff, basically it means that there's potential for PU to replace Ubers in Grand Slam and Smogon Snake Draft tours, which would be a huge deal. Currently, PU is not in any official trophy tours, but the proposal is that, maybe it will be. We don't know yet. It might get resolved by the time this goes up. I don't think it'll be resolved quite that quickly, though. But anyway, that's like the one thing that can possibly be bigger news than the Archeops suspect. And I think we're going to start off talking about that today.
All right.
So
Yeah,
no, you go.
I was thinking about the Archeops suspect, and I was quite surprised, to be honest, at the amount of what do you call it, like
Oh, we're going with
defense
Archeops.
of Archeops, defense of like Archeops in like just around the tier. It was a much closer suspect than I would have liked it to be, considering about its impact on the meta.
Really, I
Things like
wasn't
that.
surprised at all. I
Yeah,
mean,
because you think about it, and you'd think that effects of an Archeops would be amplified towards the ladder players. You know what I mean? Because Regirock wouldn't be as omnipresent as it would be in, say, for example, tournament matches.
mhm.
But people still like manage to find a way to check it somehow on ladder or not have too many issues with it apparently. So
See, the thing
that's
is,
why I was a bit surprised.
yeah, the thing is, like we discussed this last time, Archeops is a Pokemon that just gets significantly better the better the person using it is, because Defeatist is just inherently something that you have to play well to not just get like bopped by it.
Yeah.
And I just don't think there was very many good Archeops on ladder. We still have people coming into the room being like, OMG, why do you guys ban Archeops? Because if you just play PU casually on ladder, it's feasible that you don't even see non-lead Archeops at all.
Yeah. I'd also say that maybe something that played into it is the stigma surrounding really bad abilities. You know what I mean? Like, you know how Regigigas has like really good stats and like slow start, so it should be really good, but it's not. The same with like slacking. I feel like Archeops kind of like played into that a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you have people who in the room who saw the suspect and were like, "What? How can you guys ban it? It has Defeatist." That was literally their entire reasoning. Yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like the more it's a suspect. So the more competitive side of PU was the majority of the vote, but there were still enough people who were more just ladder players who you really haven't seen in tours very much, who were voting to not ban it. That's not to say that everyone who voted no ban was just a ladder player who hadn't seen any good Archeops. You had like 2 times the tap. The only council member who was against its ban, Keo, voted no ban. I have no idea how much he plays PU. But yeah, it wasn't entirely that kind of tour player ladder player split, but I definitely feel like that was there.
Yeah, I think something interesting would be to see, how the vote would be if the requirements to get the vote itself were much less like stringent. You know what I mean?
If we had
Like,
like a
if
larger pool, would it have been more ladder players? Would it
yeah,
have been not
would have been
banned?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. pretty much. That's a question that would be quite like interesting to see the answer of, because at the end of the day, like um, these are like quite important tiering decisions, and if the requirements are too easy, you might get the wrong result. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
moving past its suspect now, Auroras is definitely the will we suspect this, won't we suspect this kind of next Pokemon to look at now that Archeops and Magmortar have been taken care of. And right now, I can see Auroras is not a Pokemon that I would consider banning at the moment. And while I could see a suspect because it is still a contentious Pokemon, that does make me nervous because PU has pretty much never voted to not ban something in a suspect. That's very rare, and it would be risky. And I think that in and of itself makes considering a suspect much riskier than, say, OU can suspect Mega Metagross even if most of the council doesn't think it's worth banning because they know, yeah, there's a decent shot it won't get banned. Right now, I think Auroras is very strong, but I think it's entirely because team building has been more freed up. It's a lot. It is very possible to just keep it in check with good team building and smart play and all that kind of stuff, just abusing the fact that it is like a slow ice rock Pokemon. That's really all there is to it. And you have all these checks like Clefairy and random fire types and Lantern and Aggron, whatever, all your steel types. And I don't think it's dominating the tier like Archeops or Magmortar was at all.
I feel like the thing that plays out of Auroras' hand is that even if it's fantastic at wall breaking, you could possibly like equate how good it was at wall breaking, very similar to how good Magmortar was at wall breaking when that was in the tier. But it doesn't have the same typing, first of all, and the same speed tier. Mm-hmm. I feel like without the same speed tier as Magmortar, it's a bit more contentious of a Pokemon to just be 99% people want to ban this, we should suspect it. It's a bit more two-sided than Magmortar was.
It's like a spectrum from Drampa to Magmortar, and Auroras definitely leans harder on the Drampa side.
We could say that. I would say that with Auroras, I'd say something that really sort of plays into its hands is that most of its resists, they're not really resists, are they? Like, you mentioned Clefairy. Clefairy gets hit.
No, they're temporary checks. They're not consistent throughout the entire game for most Pokemon. There's still, Bronzor. But no, most of them are not 100% counters. Lantern can get hit by Freeze Dry. Your Togedemaru will get Earth Powered.
You don't even get to Earth Power half the time. Like with Blizzard, you just do 60.
Oh no, you don't really have to predict with it. Even the Salt Vest Lantern is certainly getting chipped when you add in Hail and Rocks damage quite quickly.
Yeah. So like I think with Auroras, it's one of those Pokemon where in practice I don't feel like it's really as strong or as powerful as Magmortar was. Even Magmortar when it was in the tier, like you could find ways to play around it in the game itself. But when you add Auroras into the mix, it's sort of like one of those Pokemon where, yeah, sure, in the team builder, the only like true counter to it you could say, or you could argue, is like Munchlax. But in the game, you like with the rocks being there, and like we have a ton of good like special meta switchings, stuff like Type Null and like Hitmonchan,
which
are like quite prominent. So like you can use those, and like from that you can sort of argue, like you have two really like good sides of the argument. I'd say it'd be really interesting to see a suspect, but I think the most important thing is to let the meta settle down a little bit, considering we have two very strong Pokemon just leave it here really quickly.
I agree, and that definitely kind of leads into the best of 3 tournament starting, because my big thing with the best of 3 tournament is we're finally not running a big seasonal with lots of best of 3 Sun and Moon PU matches, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, I should say, which we've been doing for several months now. We've got like one Sun and Moon game mixed in with old gens. It's going to be a little like the meta is not as getting run through the ringer as it has been for the last several months. We can slow things down. We can take a look at Aurorus. I don't think it's nearly, I don't think it's as pressing of an issue as something like Magmortar, where we need to look at it quickly. Even if we did end up in Slam or something, which is still, potentially a long shot. I don't think Aurorus would really like make the tier look bad at all. I think it's fine. It's not exceptionally broken in any sense. It's not as bad as even NU Venusaur. They're had like emergency like trying to look at this right now, and I don't think there's that much urgency on it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say the urgency surrounding an Aurora suspect isn't the same as like an NU suspecting Venu or when we were suspecting Magmortar ourselves. I said the urgency is much lower than that. But I think it's definitely the next most broken thing that we could look at, like the next most thing that's like straining on team building, the next most really hard thing that makes team building difficult.
Absolutely, for sure. It's not. The next thing after Aurorus, I'd say, is maybe Kingler, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think Kingler and Aurorus are really similar in how you can only really kind of check them. There's nothing like too hard and fast to stop them, but they don't feel unfairly overbearing at any point. Although we should mention, Gastrodon is looking like a very strong potential rise to OU in a couple months with the next tier shift, and when that happens, Kingler's going to have lost a very, very strong check. I hesitate to call it a full counter, but it's probably like, I don't know about the best counter, because there's Tangela and even Lurantis, but it's like top 3.
Yeah, 100%. I'd say Gastrodon was one of the easiest Kingler checks to fit on a team, and then losing it.
Well, it still is. This is months down the line.
Yeah, and also if you want to take looking into the future meta a little bit, we're probably going to get Quillfish, Altaria, and Miltank. We're probably going to get those back soon from NU. So
I hope
we should be getting like a decent Aurorus check. We should be getting a Quillfish, a Kingler check. We should be like looking in a better shape, looking into those two Pokemon in particular, which is why again like there's not that much urgency amongst council to like ban those things or have a look at them suspect.
Mm-hmm. Hey Jad, I should say, totally aside from the podcast, Fatty and M Dragon are playing right now. For the record, guys, we're both on different NUPL teams, and our teammates are we're matched up this week, and our teammates are playing right now. Anyway, that's not important. I just wanted to let him know. So the final topic is the whole core meta thing, which is just a fascinating debacle. I just don't want to say too much. This is my I don't know how much I want to say about it. It's my first big thing as a PU tier leader, really. Like, suspects are kind of routine. This is massive for PU. I think anyone who enjoys the tier and follows the tier, this really can't be overstated how huge this is, even if we don't get into Slam. Now, I think we should get into Slam. I think it'd be great if we could get into Slam. I would be ecstatic. But just the fact that people are talking about PU getting included this seriously, saying, yes, this has the potential to be in official tournaments. Yes, we'd be okay with that. I think that's very big. And right now the opportunity is more coming because people are saying, well, Ubers really shouldn't be included, so PU can take its place. But I don't think that matters. I think that this is still just a big validation for the way PU is at the moment.
So, yeah, it's quite good now that PU is finally being recognized as one of the, as really making improvements. Regardless of how this finishes, I feel like it's only really looking up because, me and you have spent, I've been here since really early in XY,
Yeah.
and to see the tier develop from like the stage where it wasn't really a serious tier, it was more like a meme or a joke, to now being considered for Grand Slam and SNIG.
It was another metagame. That's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and like, yeah, pretty much. And it's like, to see it develop into something that can rival, one of Smogon's mainstays, it's quite humbling. And yeah, it's looking up for the tier, isn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, that's my overwhelming reaction. Obviously, there's things like the whole pitting PU against Ubers. I'm not a fan of. It creates weird tensions. It'll just lead to problems in the future where PU and Ubers, two metas which you would think should never be pitted against each other. Nope, they're kind of at odds, and I'm not a huge fan of that. There's that aspect. There's obviously people posting negatives about PU in the thread. I think for the most part, it hasn't been too well founded, but there are people who are against PU's inclusion for perfectly legitimate reasons. So if you want to go support PU and have access, then by all means, I would recommend going to make a post to kind of just give the PU's PU's perspective in there. But I don't necessarily want to drag this down with like the specifics of XYZ person posted why PU shouldn't be in. I just wanted to say like there are still perfectly legitimate arguments by people who don't want to see PU in Slam.
I'd just say, like, at the moment right now, it feels like a bunch of Smogon politics, and it just, it's nothing to do really with PU or the Pokemon. It's just politics. So I think it's best we just sort of,
Yeah, and honestly, the thread is really more revolving around Ubers at the moment. I feel like personally, I think PU is absolutely ready. I think there's just so much that has gone PU's way recently. Every time we get into a tournament or a situation where we're interacting with other tiers, PU mains, they have always been able to do well. They've always been able to keep up. Even if other tour players are playing PU, we don't get washed out. Every time we get tour players into PU for things like PUPL, it's great to see the tier just grow so much from their interactions with us.
Yeah, I'd say something as well, is that the tier, it's growing without tour representation, and I feel like that's something that you don't really find in too many tiers where you don't have that. I'd say that because like you have players that don't necessarily play another tier, but their interaction level with PU is really high, and then that in itself makes them, I'd say, like really legitimate players, regardless of the tier they play. Just because they play PU doesn't mean that they're worse at, say, OU or whatever.
Yeah, we've seen players like Gen Zeon, who kind of came out of nowhere as pretty much just playing PU, to really become a good player and grow. We have PU players who play other tournaments, other circuits, who do well. We have all that, but yeah, my biggest excitement is that every time, we get into Exhibition, we get into the lower tier Premier League, we've got tour players coming down for PUPL. Every time they're interacting with PU, you can visibly see the tier growing so much as a result of that, that I'm just really excited to see what could happen if we were to get included in this year's Slam. And you know what? If not, that just means I'll be playing a lot more Smash 5 and crying in the corner and doing everything I can. And I'll definitely be a little sad if we don't make it in now. But it really is just the threat alone and that acknowledgement is, to me, the biggest story that we can give right now. If PU does get into Slam, we'll be talking a hell of a lot about that. But for now, that's all we really got.
I would also say that, well, what I was going to say is that basically, like, PU doesn't really have much to lose in comparison to Ubers. Like, we never had that much tour representation in the first place. So, like, regardless of whether we get in or we don't, it's like life continues as usual, to be honest, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it would continue as usual, but it would definitely... I can see people not being happy with the result. I'm happy that we got the thread at all. But I would still, but even now that we've had a thread, I would definitely be a little crushed to not get in. It would hit me right in the feels to almost get there and not quite make it. But yeah, I do still. I really want this segment to sound positive because this is a very positive thing in my opinion. So I think that's all we're gonna hit today. Just a lot of kind of in between stuff. You know, best of 3 tournaments started not that far in yet. We got the thread, no resolution yet. Archeops ban, we don't know what the meta is gonna be yet. But PU's just in an exciting, growing place at the moment, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more of these in the coming weeks.
Sure.
Yeah. Everyone, keep playing PU, and we'll keep talking about it. So, till next time.